welcome to Season 3 of You're Not Alone with Townsend. My name is Townsend, and if you've followed my journey, you know that I'm not only a musician, but I'm also a mental health advocate. I use my platform to help spread awareness, love, build community, and simply help people feel less alone in their struggles. In the last couple of years, I've had the chance to interview people from all over the world about a huge variety of mental health topics, and I cannot thank each of you enough for helping us continue to shine a light on the world. Every other week this season, we're bringing you the best interviews we've had. Make sure to like and follow this podcast if you're enjoying it. And if you want to keep up with everything we've got going, follow us on socials at Townsendtmusic. Hope you enjoy. What is up, guys? Welcome to this episode of You're Not Alone with Townsend. I'm so excited. Today, we've actually got Chris and Samantha, and I'm from Arkansas. And so something that we do in the summer, literally, I think every person I know goes out to the lake. We are a state that is full of water, fishing, boating, all of these things. And I saw this story on social media that Samantha shared and asked her to be on because I feel like it is so important, especially during these summer months. So we're going to be talking about water safety, boating safety, and they're going to share a story of why it is so important to them. So Chris and Samantha, thank you so much for joining us. It means so much.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, so let's first introduce yourself. So your job, your location, whatever you'd like to share. Tell us a little bit about the Catletts.
Sure. All right. So, my name's Chris Catlett. We live in right outside of Knoxville, Tennessee, basically in Knox County, Tennessee. I work in the IT field as a project manager. My wife, Samantha, she's a stay-at-home mom. Mm-hmm. She has been since our first child, Alex, was born.
Okay, very good. How many kids y'all got running around?
Just now our oldest.
Yeah, just one now, two, now one. Yeah.
Okay. And what was it was Alex, and what's the other one's name?
Connor was the one that was killed.
Yeah. Okay, and we're going to get to that. Speaking of that, Samantha, I found your story on TikTok, and you were very open about the loss of your son, Connor, which we just talked about. Could you tell my listeners a little bit about what happened?
I don't know if I can do it without crying. I'm gonna try.
That's okay.
So we had been out on the lake that day. We go to the spot that we always go to. There was a jumping bridge there. It's called Black Fox. We have a boat of our own. We were hanging out with friends, just like we do any typical Saturday in the summer, and sometimes we'd go out there and dodge a rainstorm or two, the typical summer weather.
Sure.
And so a friend of ours, I've known her 10, 12 years. She moved in across the street from us, and Connor and her daughter became besties. And they would have their Power Wheel cars, around our circle and whatnot. Anyways, they came with their boat that day. And she was Rachel, the driver of the chaparral. She wanted to take all the kids tubing. Mind you, there were 2 adults and 11 children on this boat.
Okay.
So we decided to let Connor go, along with his other best friend, Taylor. She lives across the street from us. And her parents were on their boat too, as well. In their boat, sorry. And they said, yeah, go, y'all have fun, whatever. So they went tubing, and they were gone for quite a while. And it was getting to the point to where the sun was kind of going, not down, but behind the clouds, and it was cold. Mm-hmm. Me and a friend of mine were just sitting on the back of our boat, didn't really want to get out of the water yet because it was cold and the water was warm, and a boat comes flying up to our boat in the cove where we were. And I did not see this at the time. All I remember was seeing the boat driver that dropped off Taylor, Caden, which he's 18, and was it Eli? Mm-hmm. Eli, and I think that's the only 3 kids that he had brought to us. So a stranger saw the accident, got the 3 of them off, and brought them to us. Right. And the little one, Sophia. And so we're getting anchors up, and all that stuff. And and throwing, everything back in the boat, getting, whatever. And we take off. So Sophia, her dad was in the boat. He stayed back with us. He didn't go with his wife, Rachel. He stayed back with us. So Sophia gets in the boat. We get going. And I immediately I don't know. I don't really know how I thought at that time. I kept asking Sophia, and I was holding her life jacket down as we're speeding, trying to get to the boat accident. And she said, I don't know. I said, where is Connor? Where is Connor? And she said, I don't know, but he's hurt really, really, really bad. And I said, okay. I'm thinking broken leg, broken arm, or, something like that. This part's going to get hard. So we pull up to the marina, and my husband literally banked our boat.
Mm-hmm.
I jump off and I'm screaming, yelling, where's Connor? Where's Connor? Somebody tell me where Connor is. Nobody told me anything. Everybody knew he was gone but me.
Wow.
Chris jumped off the boat and immediately saw Connor covered up in a towel, and he was still sitting upright on the boat. It's so hard. But I wandered around that marina screaming for my son, and nobody would tell me where he was.
Wow.
I don't want to get too graphic, but there were some things that that it came to me later.
Okay.
That I had everything processed.
Mm-hmm.
And the hardest part was making phone calls to my parents, to his parents. And the service was horrible out that way.
Mm.
And nobody would just tell me anything.
Sure.
And I remember Taylor's dad, which he's one of our best friends, as well as his wife. And he tried to go after that boat drunk driver, screaming and yelling, and TWRA, the cops, they're like, well, we're going to arrest you if you don't, whatever. He was triple the legal limit of alcohol that day.
So to be clear, Connor was out tubing.
Yeah, well, they were out tubing, and the rope got sucked into the impeller to the jet part of the boat.
Okay.
So they went to the far side of the lake. I know I skipped through all of that. So
that's okay.
But they had pulled over. They could only go about 5-6 miles an hour.
Sure.
And they pulled to the farthest of the channel as they could to get out of the way of other boaters. And they were hobbling, back to where we were. Caden and Eli, Caden's like 6'2". He's 18. He was on the boat. Eli, his best friend, was on the boat. He's about 6'8". And he was standing on the back of the boat, waving, screaming. There were several kids screaming and yelling for him to slow down and stop. Mind you, he was in a 19-foot bass boat.
Wow.
She was in a 24 chaparral.
Uh-huh.
The boat come up and over the boat. My son was sitting behind the driver's seat, and the boat, Connor didn't see it. Killed him instantly.
So he was in the boat. He wasn't even out on a tube.
My son was in the boat, right?
Oh my goodness.
And the boat went up and over. It ejected. I don't know. Can I cuss?
Go ahead.
I call them assholes.
Sure.
I don't call them by his name. I call them both assholes.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it threw assholes out. It ejected them from their boat. Their boat kept going and hit a shoreline.
Yeah. Right.
So It was so loud that people thought there was an explosion on the lake that day.
Okay.
And it wasn't. That's how bad the crash was. They estimated him going between, was it 30 and 40 mile an hour?
Mm-hmm.
And their boat was going about 5 to 6 miles an hour.
Wow. That sound okay. So for people listening, that sounds not fast at all, but on the water, that is blowing through. This boat's
Mhm.
going through. I can just imagine because, like I said, everybody in Arkansas does water activities like this. And I mean, this happens all the time. We've had a rope wrap up in the motor, and
Mhm. Oh, we have too.
etiquette. Yeah, boat etiquette. They're going slow, they're trying to pull over. You slow down and you try to avoid these things. To think about that boat going 30 or 40 miles an hour, like ramping another boat, it just blows my mind. So were y'all able to catch the people driving?
They were, when they were ejected, another boater picked them up
Whew,
and took them to directly to the marina.
good.
Um, the man is now in jail.
Wow.
He is serving 8 years
Yeah.
with no parole, which I'm gonna let you explain the 8 years and why we chose to do.
Well, we didn't really choose, right? It's
Sure.
not like in the justice system you get to choose
Yeah.
what.
You're like, I'd like for him to serve. This is something
Right.
Absolutely.
You
This
know,
is something I kind of want to talk about. So before you go into that, I heard a story this morning. It's something similar. There was a girl out in the water. There was an 80-plus-year-old man driving, had no idea, ran her over and kept going. Well, when they found him, right, he's still, although he had no idea and the family felt bad, it's still manslaughter. And so they're trying to figure out how for him to serve his time, or do they want him to serve his time? So I actually wanted to ask Chris, how does that even work? So you find these people, is it up to you guys? Or is it up to the justice system? Like what happens?
so kind of, at least in Tennessee, I can kind of give you a rundown of how I've kind
Yeah.
of went down here. So the night of the accident, obviously they smelled alcohol on him, so they took him to the nearest hospital and did blood work
Mhm.
that he consented to. And he knew at that point that he was in trouble, right? And so he went, got his blood taken. That blood then got sent off to a state lab for processing. So we had to wait on that to come back before any formal charges could be filed. So once we got that back, he was like double, triple the limit. And this was 2 hours after he'd already been out of the water. So you can imagine what it
Wow.
was. Yeah.
Okay.
So we got the blood work back. It was, a lot of alcohol, nothing else but alcohol. And so after that, in Tennessee, like a couple of weeks prior to this, the July 1st, the DUI laws in Tennessee, as far as the roadway, extended over to the waterways as well. So it used to
Okay.
be a whole lot more lax here on things like this. Now DUI on the water is the same as a DUI in the road,
Okay.
on the roadway. So that was a good thing, obviously. So, I don't know what the penalties would have been had they not matched what they are on the roadways. But, in his case, since he killed someone, he was intoxicated. It was a vehicular homicide. And then he got, there was, I think, 11 or 12 other people on the boat as well.
There
And
were 12 others. Yeah.
so for those, he got charged with,
Deadly use of a weapon.
something along those lines. It was also a felony.
And it carried 1 to 2 years per count.
Yeah, but the thing
Wow.
is, those counts can run consecutively, and then there's lots of things with the legal system I don't even still pretend to
Sure.
understand.
Yeah.
It's so hard to understand for me. But with those kind of things, where the vehicular homicide was a Class B felony, like those were much further down the ladder, were more like Class D and E felonies.
Wow.
So that's one of those. Even if he gets charged with them, let's say technically it's a full sentence at 8 years for just those. So, because I know that the sentences can run concurrent and, and all these other just legal stuff that I don't understand. And the more I look into legal stuff, usually the more irritated I get.
Yeah, the more confusing.
Yeah. And I get irritated because the sentence hardly ever matches the crime. Right.
Ooh, isn't that
And
right?
yeah, I mean, even, you give them 30 years, they serve 3,
Yep.
it's like, how does this work?
Yeah.
So I try not to get myself too overly involved in looking at
Yeah.
that stuff because I just end up aggravated.
That's it. That's why I'm not a lawyer. Absolutely not whatsoever. Okay, so he ended up getting 8 years.
Yeah.
And you said no parole, is that no bond or whatever?
Yeah. So
Okay.
it was a plea agreement that took place between
Okay.
the government up there and him. So he pled guilty to the charges.
Okay.
He got 8 years.
Mhm.
So what was important for us was, okay, when this guy gets out, if he gets out of prison, knowing the history about him that we know now, which is a history of alcoholism, how do we keep or do what we can to keep this from happening to another family? Let's say he gets out and he's like, hey, I'm out. I'm going to go get a boat and start drinking again. Right. So they structured the deal, and I give credit to the district attorney up here who structured it. He did a really good job in doing this, to where when he gets out, he's going to be under 8 years of supervised probation. He can't drink, he can't drive, and he can't operate a boat.
Okay.
So, therefore, removing those avenues of potentially hurting another family or killing someone else due to his negligence, right?
That's right.
So it was important for us that he not be able to just immediately get out and go back to old habits.
Wow.
And, once the plea deal was struck, there was a lot of people in our area that were like, only 8 years. Well, of course, I agree with you. It should be 100 years. That wouldn't have been enough.
Yeah.
In my opinion, when you take a life, it should be punished with your life should be forfeit.
Sure.
That's the way I feel about it.
Sure.
Obviously that's not the world we live in, but that being said, the 8-year deal, we got a little bit of flack for that locally, just people questioning why it was only 8 years, and those were all fair questions. I don't want to say I was happy with 8 years. I don't know that I would have been happy with 100.
Right.
But the thing that we didn't want to do, had we took it to trial and said, you know what, we just want to let this thing go to trial, then am I pretty confident he would have got probably more towards the max for the crime? Probably so. Before a jury of his peers? Probably so. I doubt they would have took much leeway on the guy, but you just never know.
Yeah.
But what we didn't want to do is, so many of those kids that were on the boat that day are still struggling with what they saw and what they experienced. It's, a lot of them have PTSD symptoms. And so this extends much farther beyond just ourselves and how we feel about it.
Yeah.
So what we didn't want to happen was for there to be a trial, a 2-week-long trial, and all these young kids have to get up there and testify and relive every detail of that night.
The youngest was 9.
Yeah. So we didn't want to put them and their families through, further stress, turmoil, and further, mess up these kids' emotional state even more than it already is.
Man.
So we took that into major consideration, right? So we didn't want that. We didn't want them to have to go through that again. And have to relive that day for another whole week in court, right?
Oh.
So that's kind of the story behind the sentence, and kind of how it was arrived at that, and kind of the process after he gets out, if he gets out. So, he'll be monitored. And,
sure. Man.
So
that is so much. And I commend you for taking it a step further, because you think about, it's already done the damage to your family, and that's it. And you could take that and just be done with it, shut it out. But instead you went a step further and you're like, okay, I don't want this to happen to anyone else, so keep him off the water. I love that you guys did that. And again, kind of why I do this podcast. I want to share these stories, and I want to share with people, hey, be careful, because this stuff can happen. I want to spread awareness and let people know this is something. There are a few things that I love that you pointed out. One, I love that you did that. Thank you so much for taking it a step further, because 8 years blows my mind. I'm not going to lie. I'm like your peers. I think that is bizarre that he only got 8 years. Are you enjoying this conversation? This project is funded by patrons and sponsors. So if you like what you hear and you'd like to help us continue changing lives in 2024, we would love to have you join the family. Reach out to us at townsendtmusic@hotmail.com if you'd like to be a sponsor, or hop on patreon.com/townsendtmusic to join the patron family. As a thank you, you're going to receive extra podcast questions and content every episode, discounts, exclusive content, and so much more. So join the family and let's continue changing lives.
The guys that worked that case, it has shook them.
Oh.
So I think now they have been nothing but kind and, everything to us, and reaching out to us, and showing up to court and everything. And they've, I think it's really rocked the world seeing the things that they had seen that day as well. And I hope that, because they know where all the party spots are on that lake, and they need to enforce it. Get your binoculars, sit out, and we kind of talked about it. And I know it's kind of whatever, but they have constables and they have, local volunteer firefighters. And it's like, why can't we have a local boating, entourage out on the water, and do the same thing as a constable, have every right basically and arrest. But I mean, of course we're just thinking, but
what it boils down to is TWRA does as good a job they can with the resources that they have. The problem is they don't have nearly enough resources, like many government agencies, right? So, Norris Lake, the lake that we're referencing, is a very, very large lake down here in our area, a very popular lake. It's one of the, probably, as far as the amount of boats on the lake, probably top 10 in the US. It gets a lot of traffic. We get a lot of boaters from Kentucky and Ohio that visit this lake. Most of the time, or at least the last few summers, in my experience, there's been more out of staters on the water than even locals. And, there's just not enough enforcement.
Yeah.
There's not enough boats out there. These guys can only cover so much water in a day, and there needs to be more enforcement. They need to get these guys more funds, whatever they need to do. The local police down here needs to get some boats on the water. They need to do something.
Absolutely.
I think I can't remember what the actual statistic was. So, it's plus minus. It was like around 23 or 24 deaths on our waterways last year.
Just y'all's.
Yeah. And I mean, I know it may not sound like a lot, but in this area, that's a lot.
Oh, no, that's a lot for one lake.
Wow. For sure. And the majority of those were on Norris Lake, and a lot of them due to alcohol and just people that are inexperienced, whether it be on a jet ski or a boat, that don't know how to operate them. And, I see it all the time. We'll go out on a weekend. I'm like, you can get behind a boat within, if you're an experienced boater and you get behind a boat, you can tell using a couple of minutes how experienced they are, or if they're drunk.
Absolutely.
The amount of inexperience on our waterways is what really concerns me too. It's anybody can go rent a boat. Anybody, whether you have a boating safety certification on it, anybody can go rent a boat. So you see a lot of rentals out there. People rent them and go party on them. Now, I'm not advocating for people not to have fun. We love to have fun on the lake too, but like anything else in life, there's a responsible way to have fun and an irresponsible way.
Yeah. I see on TikTok and social media, people post all the time and they think it's funny, but it's things like this that I have seen and been made aware of. Like they'll rent jet skis and boats and take them out and just do the silliest things that, again, they think they're having fun and it's innocent to an extent, but you're still risking other people's lives and yours as well. And like I said, they don't know how to drive them. They think it's funny. Like I said, Arkansas is known for boating and water activities, and there are actually a few little cul-de-sacs that I'm thinking of is specifically where all the boats go and they tie together and all you do is drink all day, which again, go have fun, but be responsible, right? Because so many accidents happen and there's just not enough police enforcement on the water. They try, it's not their fault, but I think people having common sense, like I just want people to hear this and say, oh my gosh, okay, that's right. There are kids on the lake. There are other people on the lake. Like it's not just me and my friends. And that's what this podcast is about. I think what made you want to be so open about your story and your situation? I mean, that's so vulnerable and so hard. And how long ago was it?
It was July 22nd last year.
Ooh, okay. So it's not even been a year. So what made you want to get on and share your story publicly?
We have to.
Yeah.
Because this is just, it's nonsense. It's just, I don't even have the word to even, it's got to stop. It has to stop. I am now, unfortunately, in a club that I don't want to be in.
Yeah.
And the only thing I can be for my son is continue to live and to continue to be an advocate for him.
That's right.
Because his voice was taken. So our goal is to spread as much awareness as we can to this situation.
I love it. Chris, how old was Connor? when this happened?
He was 12 and
was 12.
he was almost 13. Yeah.
Ooh.
He turned he would have turned 13 August 17th.
Yeah. So we
Golly.
celebrated his birthday, just a few weeks after that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
This hits close to home for me because both my nieces live on the water, actually, and they're about that age, and they're on the water every day during the summer. During school, they're on the water on the weekends. So this hits close to home for me. What's some advice you would have for people getting out on the water this summer?
Well, I guess, my whole thing is you can never control other people's actions and what they decide to do, right?
Mhm.
There's nothing you can do about it. If somebody's going to get behind the wheel of a boat 3 times over the legal limit and drink and drive a boat, then they're going to do it, right?
Right.
The only thing, you're always at the, whether you're driving to work, driving home, going on the water, and this is something that's been hard for me to realize over I guess this incident really made me realize it, is that you're at the mercy of other people and their decisions so much during your day to day,
Mhm.
and it's just crazy to, if you sit back and think about it, just every day, how much you were at the mercy of other people's decisions.
Absolutely.
And, it's, you have to go to work, you have to drive, right? And if you want to have fun and go do things in life and enjoy life, like boating or whatever it may be, then you're always going to put yourself in a vulnerable position, and be at the risk of other people's ignorant decisions.
Yeah.
The only thing on the lake you can do is just, at least in my experience, is give yourself space from other boats. If they're not going to give you space, make your own space
And get educated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Take safety
I like
courses, new boaters, like I said, I don't know what the laws are in Arkansas, but new boaters here, if they were born after 1989, then they have to take a safety course that they have to pass to get basically a boating license or a certificate. I think that any amount of boater education, particularly for new boaters or operators, should be commonplace in all states.
I agree.
There's not a single accident on the water that could not be prevented. I mean, if you think
Mhm.
about it, whether it's a boat crash, whether it's somebody runs their boat up on a bank because they're drunk, or hits another boat, and God forbid another kid or another family's boat gets hit, there's not a single accident on the water that can't be prevented.
Yeah.
Not one.
Yeah.
There's not a single one that could not have been prevented.
Yeah.
So it's just, I know in our lake, it's not a very wide lake, the one that we frequent, and people just, the lack of boater education and just common courtesy is just insane.
It's like the wild, wild west out there. People are going in between boats. I mean, last year, this was a month before Connor passed away. A friend of ours, he found this nice little cove that he goes hunting in sometimes, and he takes his pontoon over there. And I was driving our boat. I grew up on the water my entire life, and I just could never back down a trailer, but that's fine.
Yeah.
but anyways, we were coming out of that cove, and jet skiers and bass boats are the worst for sticking along the edges of the water. And I was coming out, and I was going maybe 10. There was a jet ski that come flying past me, and I completely let off the throttle. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I could have just killed somebody, and I was the one paying attention.
Right.
And they just don't understand that that's how people get killed, is by other people not paying attention.
Yep.
But and our boat broke down last year too. And we were being towed in by a friend of ours, and people could clearly see that we were in tow, and we were off to the a far side of the channel. And here comes a pontoon. I'm telling you, maybe 20 foot off the front of our boat.
Wow.
And just completely cut us off. I mean, it's just like that all the time. People have it's rude. Number one.
Yeah.
Number two, number one, it's dangerous.
Yeah.
Number two, it's rude and inconsiderate. And that goes to show the lack of knowledge that people have, the boating etiquette, on the water. And it's just, people just don't care. They they get out there and they
act like they're the only one on the water at all times.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what drives me the craziest, is that you see hundreds of boats out here, at any point during your time out there, and it's like, you know you're not the only one out there. You can't
Mhm.
drive around the lake like you're the only one out there.
Yep.
There's rules on the water like there's rules on the road.
Mhm.
Yep.
The problem is there's more enforcement on the road than there is on the water, right?
Yeah.
So it's just, unfortunately with boating, until there's more enforcement, at least in our area, which, let's be honest, I don't see that happening anytime soon,
Yeah.
unless they suddenly get a much larger budget than they have now. That it's always going to be up to people making the right decisions.
Mhm.
That's
And
right.
let's be honest, I feel like there's more people, at least on our lakes, that make wrong decisions more than they make right decisions.
That's right.
And
Absolutely. People are stingy. Let's be for real.
Mhm.
I think
yeah,
so. I think the biggest thing that I take away from the story, and for people listening for the summer, just pay attention. Slow down, pay attention. It is not just you on the water. There are families out there. I think the biggest thing that I see out on our lakes, and honestly, this is what I thought happened with Connor. There are people tubing, there are people skiing. And I know for me personally, there have been a ton of times I've let go or fallen off, and you're just free floating in the lake. So you're just praying that people are paying attention because you're just a head bobbing in the water.
mhm.
And so you've taken your precautions. Sometimes you wave your skis above your head or your knee board or whatever. You've got your life jacket on. But as Chris said, you're at the mercy of everyone else. So I'm hoping people listening, I mean, Connor's was just a total freak accident that could have been avoided with the driver. That was not his fault. He was not out bobbing in the water, which I honestly thought that's what did happen. And so
A
even
lot of people
crazier
do.
to
Yeah,
me.
a lot of
Yeah.
people thought that. Yeah, you just
Yeah.
don't think about somebody sitting in the boat and getting
Yes,
hit, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
And so for me, I feel like the takeaway, which I would love y'all's takeaway as well, but for me, the takeaway would be you're at the mercy of everyone else. So if they take that into consideration, there's so many people on the water, so many children. The last thing I want to do is hit someone, much less go to prison for, manslaughter or homicide or something like that.
Yeah.
So just slowing down, taking your time. Please don't get drunk and drive. That is just the wildest thing for me to think of. What do you feel like? Chris, if you had one takeaway for people, what would you want that to be? People listening.
Think about that one for a second.
Think about Samantha. You got one?
Mm-mm.
I have many
I'm
None.
gonna
takeaways.
piggyback off of
I'm
his.
trying to narrow it down to just one
Yeah.
takeaway.
I
honestly.
know. Just summarize it into one takeaway for people listening.
Just
Bodie's.
just boating related or life in
Sure,
general.
sure.
Okay. Well, boating related, just be respectful of others.
Yeah,
Just be respectful of others, just follow the rules out on the lake.
yeah,
There's plenty of water, plenty of space for
that's right.
everyone. And if you're buzzing up and down the lake 100 mile an hour, why? Why? What's the point? Are you out there to have a good time, or are you out there just to get it over with as soon as you can? Right.
Yeah,
So that's what I don't understand. You see so many people going zipping up and down the lake 100 mile an hour. I'm like, what is the point of this?
Especially bass boats.
You're out there to have a good time and relax. I don't understand the hurried nature of everyone. You're on the
yeah,
lake.
yeah.
You
I
know,
think
I,
Samantha, you mentioned the bass boats like being right on the cove or right on the side. I
Absolutely.
always take my kayak out, and I have almost gotten creamed by so many bass boats. And they think they're in the clear because they're up on the coast, and they need to realize there are people up there too. There are people fishing, out in knee-high water, things like that. So everybody needs to be careful. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so kind of going back a little bit, I cannot imagine the toll that this took on y'all's mental health. And you had mentioned all the children on the boat. My heart goes out to each and every one of you guys. I cannot imagine, like Chris said, the PTSD and just the trauma that you've gone through. Chris and Samantha, what do y'all do for self-care, or how do you get through the hard days? Because I know there are a lot.
Cry. Or I talk to friends, I talk to family. Mother's Day was hard. I kept to myself. My birthday is Christmas Eve and of course Christmas Day. That was, my first. We didn't put a tree up, and I stayed a shut in. There's a lot of things that have changed with me. I've never been the therapist kind of girl. I just kind of deal with things in my own way, and that seems to work, but sometimes I'll call a friend, or I'll call my mom, or I'll call my stepmom, and and talk to them and get stuff out, and and then I feel better, but it's never gonna go away. It's always, they say, well, it's easier in time and all this stuff. It really isn't. I now sit and I talk to Connor, and he's right here on my mantle, you know, so it's just it's hard, you know, it's just hard some days, and some days, you know, it helps me going into his bedroom. The kid always had his blinds open.
Yeah.
I'd have to tell him at midnight, shut your blinds, you know, and you don't want some creepy man or somebody, you know, looking in your window or something weird. And you know, and so it helps sometimes to go in there and to sniff his clothes and
sure, absolutely.
you know, and everything. But
yeah, I think not to interrupt you, I think not going to therapy, I think that's okay. And again, why I have these podcasts and why I ask this question in particular to every guest, letting people know whatever helps you, that's your therapy. So call in a friend or family member, that's therapy for you. A lot of people I've talked to, they write stuff down. They never wrote before, but they try to write.
A lot. I journal all the time. I write, I have pages and pages and pages and pages of stuff. Sometimes anger, sometimes I'm crying.
Sure. And that's okay.
Sometimes it's something that I remember that he's done or said, and I, you know, write down my little Connorisms, you know, and go from there. And I don't go back and read them. That's just how I'm feeling at that point in time. Maybe eventually I can go back and read it, but once I've read it, once I've written it, it's gone. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And then me and my friends, we have our hot tub nights, and we sit in there, and you know, we talk, we cry, and you know, and everything, and kind of get it out on the table, because our neighbors are our best friends, literally. So we all will sit in the hot tub and, you know, across the street, you know, and we'll sit back there for hours, and the guys are like, are y'all not like, you know,
like pruny?
Yeah, we're a little pruny, but we're fine. No skin's falling off yet.
So I love it.
We're good. So they have helped me. Little did they know that they're helping heal me.
Yeah.
By doing, you know, just being there for me, and you know, and not, well, how are you doing? Because I got tired of that. I'm like, because I don't want to cry today. Don't ask me how I'm doing. You know
how I'm doing.
Just say, hey, girl, you know, what'd you do today? You know, or did you watch the show on TV, or you know, or something. So, you know, and everybody has kind of gotten the hint of that. But our support system has been massive, not just by our close friends that were there, which the ones that live here in our neighborhood, all of them were there that night. And but not even that, but community, that Connor's teachers, his principal, they recently put a bench up at his middle school in honor of him. So, you know, and the community has been, strangers have, I mean, the pastors from the churches, I mean, they have come by our house. They, some of the congregation will reach out to me, you know, and ask me how I'm doing, or, you know, just people I haven't heard from in years that I went to high school with, you know, and how are you doing? You know, and it's just, I like it, but you know, there for a little while, it got kind of old. You know,
absolutely.
I don't need to be asked every day how I'm doing. Just let me be, you know, I'll tell you how I'm feeling. If I start crying, you know what kind of day I've had.
I get it. Chris, what helps you through the tough days?
Well, I will say that I've dealt with this situation totally different than her. And
sure,
I'm an internalizer, right? I internalize and bury things deep, and it's not always a healthy thing. Sure. But for me, I've always done that, and it has worked for me. And so I've just kind of tend to bury things and don't talk about problems and issues a whole lot. He said, not always probably a healthy thing for everyone, but it's always kind of worked for me. And so, you know, it's one of those things, I don't talk about it a whole lot with anybody, even with her. I don't talk about it. I just don't. I choose not to, at least right now.
Yeah.
And, you know, me personally, you know, I know that you discuss a lot of mental health aspects on your podcast. So, but you know, I've had depression since I was like a teenager, and I still manage it, you know, with help, and also anxiety disorder as well. Mm-hmm. So on top of that, you know, when you factor that into such a massive loss, you know, it really, really took a mental toll on me.
Yeah.
And I remember the night it happened, and for like 3 or 4 days later, I'd stay in the bedroom. I didn't even leave. I didn't leave the bedroom. I did not leave. I didn't want to see anybody. I didn't want to talk to anybody. There was like 100 people over here, just trying to be there and be good friends, right? And I didn't want to talk to any of them. It helped her. She needed that, but that's not what I needed. I needed to just be left alone to process.
Yeah.
And I was still kind of in a state of shock for the better part of a week. Just the initial shock of it all before I could really just come around to the fact that what had happened, and I feel like I'm a pretty strong person. I've dealt with quite a bit of stuff in my life over the years, and I'm also a very fortunate person. And I still consider myself, even after all this, to be very blessed. The things I have in life, the opportunities that have been presented to me over the years. And, I consider myself a Christian. I was very, very pissed off at God for quite a while. Very, very pissed off about it, and pissed off at him. And then I have to tell myself he doesn't control people's decisions and their decision making, and so it's just, mental health is I feel like having a mental health issue is so much more socially acceptable now than it was even like 10 years ago.
5 years, last year, Lord have mercy. Yeah.
Yeah. It's something that, I'm 40. So when I was a young teenager, when I was diagnosed with it, I didn't know what was wrong with me,
Yeah.
It was like, I just know I don't feel right. And they're like, pretty sure you have depression. What is that?
Yeah.
So
why? What is that? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm like, I have no reason to be depressed,
Yeah.
and but they're like, it's not about that. It's just it's like an imbalance, right? A chemical imbalance kind of thing. And, some people, you'll tell them you're depressed. You're like, what do you have to be depressed about? I'm like, nothing.
Right.
I hate that answer.
I know.
People are like, why are you depressed? I'm like, I don't
You
want
have
to be
everything.
depressed.
You're like, shut up. That's
yeah. You think I chose this? It's just, so, I deal with things completely different. I don't necessarily have, I guess you could call it an outlet. Well, maybe I do have an outlet, and that's just keeping busy, whether that's, we're remodeling some stuff in the house, doing things around the house. And, I will stay busy doing stuff like that, small projects. Tons of stuff really around the house have kind of kept my mind occupied. I found that whether it's watching a movie I want to watch, or watching a show, or doing something outside, or, around the house, small projects, as long as my mind is busy, I'm much better. Sure. If I sit around and let my mind wander for days, it's I get in the dark spots. So
sure.
I have to tell myself, all right, you can't go down this path. You can't sit around and not do anything for too long, or your mind's going to start to wander.
Sure. And I think that right there, absolutely. I think that's good awareness. And like you said, I think keeping yourself busy with tasks, I think that is a coping mechanism. Absolutely. Yeah. Something I read before we hopped on here, and don't quote me because I obviously don't know the exact number, but they were saying in like 2022, there were over 5,000 boating accidents. And they were talking about like 85% of drownings were from people not wearing a life jacket. And so I think listening to this podcast and listening to the story, that's 5,000 accidents that could have been avoided, like Chris said earlier. So just take responsibility. This summer when you're going out to the water, I know Tennessee and Arkansas were full of water and fun activities. Go have fun. Be careful, because I'm blown away by this story because, like I said, I was expecting something completely different, but this was something that could happen to anyone at any time. So please be careful this summer when you go out. Samantha and Chris, thank you so much for joining me and my listeners. It means so much.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're just glad to be able to share his story and spread awareness. That's all we want is to spread awareness on this. So
absolutely.
Just pay attention. Get educated.
I know my listeners and I appreciate it so much. Guys, we're going to keep talking. I'm going to ask them some more personal questions. You know how this works. If you are a patron, hop on patreon.com/Townsendtmusic. We're going to do these extra questions. If not, we'll see you guys next time.
If you'd like to hear the rest of this interview, visit patreon.com/Townsendtmusic. And don't forget, you can also watch the interviews on our YouTube channel at Townsendtmusic YouTube.
If you're looking to buy or sell, I have the perfect realty company for you. Clark & Co. Realty is located in the Benton, Bryant, Arkansas area. And they understand that buying or selling a home is more than just a transaction. It's a life-changing experience. That's why their team of highly seasoned real estate professionals is dedicated to providing exceptional, personalized services for all their clients. They truly take great pride in the relationships they build, and they always work relentlessly on the client's behalf to help them achieve their perfect real estate goals. They always have the client in mind, and I can speak firsthand when I say how reliable, trustworthy, and quick they were. When I was looking to buy my first home, they were there with me every step of the way, answering every question I could think of. They showed me a great amount of knowledge and patience through the process. It's no wonder they've won so many awards for their outstanding services and their excellent relationships with clients. So if you're looking to buy or sell, there is no better option than Clark & Co. Realty.